Chapter 1: A Partridge in a Pear Tree. Adam Denson had always believed that gut instincts were nature's way of whispering truths we weren't ready to hear. His father had said it once. Over a plate of dry turkey and a glass of bourbon, trust your gut, son. It's the only voice that doesn't lie. At 28, Adam had built his life around that principle. It guided his career in marketing, his friendships, even the way he chose his apartment. Quiet street, second floor, 2 windows facing east for morning light. Practical, predictable, safe. Safe was good. Safe meant control. And control meant no surprises. Except lately, his gut had been anything but quiet. He sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, a half-drained mug of coffee cooling beside him. Outside, the city was dressed for Christmas. Twinkling lights strung across balconies, wreaths on doors, the faint hum of carols drifting from a neighbor's speaker. Adam loved the season. The smell of pine, the crisp air, the way strangers smiled more easily in December. It was the one time of year that felt like a promise. And yet, here he was, staring at the blinking cursor on his screen, thinking about Tessa Wilson. Tessa, his girlfriend of 3 years, his almost fiancée. Almost. Adam rubbed the back of his neck, trying to ease the tension that had settled there like an unwelcome tenant. He'd been planning to propose, had even browsed rings online, comparing carats and clarity like a man studying stock options. She was perfect, smart, funny, beautiful in that effortless way that made heads turn when they walked into a room. She remembered birthdays, sent thank you notes, laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. The kind of woman his mother adored and his friends envied. And that was the problem. Nobody is that perfect. Adam leaned back in his chair, eyes tracing the string of lights he'd hung across the window last weekend. They blinked in cheerful rhythm, oblivious to the storm brewing in his head. He tried to ignore it, the nagging sense that something was off. For months, he told himself he was overthinking. That caution was just fear wearing a sensible suit. But every time Tessa smiled, every time she agreed with him without hesitation, the voice in his gut grew louder. People disagreed. People argued about movies, about pizza toppings, about whether the toilet paper should roll over or under. Real couples had friction. But with Tessa, nothing. Not a single spark of conflict. It was like living in a fairy tale where the princess never tripped, never cursed, never forgot to feed the cat. And Adam knew one thing for certain. Fairy tales weren't real. He closed the laptop and stood, pacing the length of the kitchen. His mother thought he was being ridiculous. You're lucky, Adam. Women like Tessa don't come around every day. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was sabotaging his own happiness because he'd seen too many divorces, heard too many horror stories about custody battles and broken homes. But then he remembered his father's words, steady and unyielding. Trust your gut. So he would. The plan had come to him 2 weeks ago, simple and sharp as a paper cut. Tessa's company Christmas party was scheduled for Friday night. She'd been talking about it for days, what dress to wear, whether to bring wine or champagne. Adam had smiled, nodded, pretended to check his calendar before sighing dramatically. I can't make it, he'd said. Work trip. They need me in Chicago. Her face had fallen, just for a second, before she recovered with that perfect smile. You can't do anything about work, she'd said, and kissed him like nothing was wrong. But something was wrong. Adam felt it in his bones. He stopped pacing and glanced at the clock. Almost noon. In 24 hours, he'd know the truth. He hated the idea of spying, hated what it said about him, but marriage was a gamble and he wasn't about to bet his life on blind trust. Not when the stakes were this high. Adam walked to the living room, sinking into the couch they'd picked out together last spring. Gray fabric, clean lines, modern but cozy, Tessa had said. He stared at the cushions, wondering how many evenings they'd spent here, watching movies, sharing takeout, planning a future that suddenly felt like smoke slipping through his fingers. He loved her. That was the worst part. He loved her laugh, the way she scrunched her nose when she was thinking, the way she made him feel like the most interesting man in the room. But love wasn't enough. Not if it was built on illusion. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from Tessa. Don't forget to pack warm clothes for Chicago. Snowstorm coming. Adam stared at the message, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. She was thoughtful, considerate, perfect as always. He typed back a quick reply, something light and casual, before tossing the phone aside. Tomorrow, he'd check into a cheap motel on the other side of town. Pay in cash. Wait, and then what? Catch her in a lie? Confirm his worst fears? He didn't know. He only knew he couldn't keep living with questions gnawing at his sanity. Adam exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. Outside, a car horn blared, followed by laughter and the distant jingle of bells. Christmas was everywhere, bright and loud and full of joy. He wondered if this was how the season started for everyone. With hope, with plans, with the illusion that everything would be merry and bright. He hoped so, because for him, Christmas was about to get complicated. Chapter 2: 2 Turtle Doves. Adam woke before his alarm, the gray light of dawn filtering through the blinds like a secret. For a moment, he lay still, listening to the hum of the radiator and the distant sound of tires sloshing through wet streets. His apartment smelled faintly of cinnamon. Tessa's doing, of course. She'd insisted on holiday-scented candles in every room. "It makes the season feel magical," she'd said, and Adam had smiled because that's what you do when someone you love is happy. He swung his legs out of bed, the hardwood cold against his feet, and sat there for a beat, staring at the suitcase by the door. Packed and ready, like a soldier waiting for orders. Except this wasn't a business trip. It was reconnaissance, a mission he hated himself for planning, but couldn't abandon. Adam showered, dressed, and moved through the apartment with mechanical precision. Every detail felt sharper today. The framed photos on the wall, the throw blanket draped over the couch, the faint scent of Tessa's perfume lingering in the air. He wondered if he'd missed these things when they were gone. If they were gone. By 8:30, he was in his car, the suitcase in the trunk, his heart thudding like a drumline. The city was waking up, streets slick with last night's rain, shop windows glowing with garlands and gold lettering. "Merry Christmas. Joy to the world." Adam drove past them all, feeling like an imposter in a holiday postcard. The motel was exactly what he'd expected, cheap, anonymous, the kind of place where nobody asked questions as long as you paid in cash. The clerk barely looked up when Adam slid 2 20s across the counter. "Room 12, the man grunted, handing over a key that looked older than Adam's car. The room smelled faintly of bleach and something less pleasant beneath it. A single bed, a dresser, a TV bolted to the wall. Adam dropped his suitcase and sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at the faded floral curtains. This was his hiding place, his vantage point. He felt ridiculous, like a character in a bad detective movie, but the alternative was worse, marrying someone who wasn't who she claimed to be. He checked his phone. No messages from Tessa yet. She was probably at work, finalizing party details, maybe texting her friends about what time to meet. Adam imagined her laughing, tossing her hair, being perfect, always perfect. The hours crawled. He answered a few work emails, ate a granola bar, flipped through channels without seeing a single frame. By late afternoon, the motel walls felt like they were closing in. He grabbed his coat and stepped outside, breathing in the cold air like medicine. Across the street, a diner glowed with neon lights, promising coffee and pie. Adam considered going in, then decided against it. He didn't want to risk running into someone he knew. Not tonight. Back in the room, he checked his phone again. Still nothing. At 6:30, a text finally appeared. "Heading to the party. Wish you were here." Adam stared at the heart emoji until it blurred. He typed back something cheerful. "Have fun. Knock 'em dead." And hit send. Then he sat there, phone in hand, waiting for the reply that usually came within seconds. Didn't. 10 minutes passed, then 15. When her response finally arrived, "Thanks, babe. Talk later." Adam felt a flicker of unease. Tessa never delayed. Her phone was practically an extension of her hand. Tonight, though, she was slow, distracted, his gut twisted. By 8, Adam couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his keys, left the suitcase behind, and drove through streets strung with lights and crowded with holiday shoppers. His pulse kept time with the windshield wipers, fast and relentless. When he turned onto his block, the sight hit him like a punch. Cars lined up along the curb, headlights glinting off wet pavement. Music thumped faintly from somewhere above, mingled with laughter. Adam parked half a block away and walked the rest, his breath fogging in the cold. The building loomed ahead, familiar and foreign all at once. He climbed the steps slowly, every sense on high alert. From the sidewalk, he could see the glow of his apartment windows, the silhouettes moving inside. And then he saw her, Tessa, sitting on the couch, on someone's lap. Adam froze, the world narrowing to a single frame. Her arms draped around a man's shoulders, her lips pressed to his in a kiss that was anything but friendly. Around them, people laughed and drank, oblivious to the implosion happening in Adam's chest. For a second, he couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The noise, the lights, the betrayal, it all blurred into static. Then something cold and sharp settled over him, slicing through the chaos. Clarity, purpose. He pulled out his phone and hit record. The camera captured everything. The strangers in his living room, the bottles littering his coffee table, the woman he'd loved tangled up with a man he'd never seen before. Adam moved like a shadow, circling the perimeter, filming it all. No one noticed him. Why would they? He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be in Chicago working late, being the dependable boyfriend who trusted without question. When he'd seen enough, Adam slipped down the hall to his office and locked the door behind him. His hands shook as he checked the video, making sure it was clear, undeniable. It was. There would be no gaslighting, no excuses. The truth was right there, pixel by pixel. He sat at his desk, staring at the screen, and felt the weight of 3 years pressing down on him. The dinners, the vacations, the whispered plans for the future. All of it crumbled like gingerbread left out in the rain. He wanted to rage, to smash something, but the anger was buried under something heavier. Resolve. Adam opened his messages and typed 2 words. Call me. He hit send and waited. Outside, the music cut off abruptly. Voices hushed. He could hear Tessa's muffled tone, sharp and urgent, telling everyone to be quiet. A moment later, his phone lit up, vibrating against the desk. Adam let it ring twice before he stood, unlocked the door, and stepped into the living room. The silence was deafening. Dozens of eyes swung toward him, wide and stunned. Tessa's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Adam held up his phone, still ringing, and smiled. A smile that wasn't nice at all. "You all have 5 minutes to get out of my apartment," he said, his voice calm, almost conversational. "Before I call the police." The room erupted into motion. People scrambled for coats and bags, muttering apologies that meant nothing. Tessa's 2 closest friends bolted for the door, but Adam's voice stopped them cold. "You're forgetting something," he said, nodding toward Tessa. She finally found her voice, a jumble of excuses spilling out. "It's not what it looks like. I can explain. Please just listen." But Adam cut her off with a single word. "Out." And then he turned his back on her, walked into his office, and closed the door. Chapter 3: 3 French Hens. The apartment was silent now, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the pounding in Adam's ears. He sat at his desk, staring at the glow of his monitor, the cursor blinking like a metronome in the dark. Behind him, the living room was a graveyard of empty cups and abandoned laughter. The smell of spilled liquor clung to the air, sharp and sour. Tessa was gone. He hadn't watched her leave. He hadn't needed to. The sound of the door clicking shut had been enough. A punctuation mark at the end of a chapter he hadn't planned to write. Adam exhaled slowly, forcing his hands to steady as he opened his email. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, then began to move with deliberate precision. No theatrics, no venom, just facts. Subject: for clarity. Body: friends, I wanted you to hear this from me before rumors start. Tonight, I discovered Tessa hosting a party in my apartment without my knowledge or consent. During that party, she was engaged in behavior that makes continuing our relationship impossible. I've attached a video for transparency. Please respect my privacy as I handle this situation. Adam. He read it twice, then attached the file, the damning evidence, and hit send. One click and the truth was out. No spin. No chance for her to paint him as the villain in someone else's bedtime story. Next, her parents. That was harder. He'd grown fond of them. Sunday dinners, warm smiles, the way her mom always sent him home with leftovers. They deserved honesty, too. His message was gentler this time, stripped of anger, heavy with regret. When he finished, he sat back and stared at the screen, feeling the weight of finality settle over him like snow. Then he blocked Tessa. Phone, email, socials. Every door locked, every bridge burned. It was brutal but necessary. He couldn't risk the spiral of apologies and explanations, the endless loop of "it's not what it looks like." He'd seen enough. He knew exactly what it was. Adam closed the laptop and leaned back, pressing the heels of his hands to his eyes. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving exhaustion in its wake. His body felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything solid and left him with air and ache. He thought about pouring a drink, then decided against it. He didn't want to drown tonight in whiskey and bad decisions. Instead, he stood and began cleaning, gathering cups, tossing bottles, wiping down counters with mechanical efficiency. The apartment looked like a crime scene, and maybe it was. The murder of trust, the death of a future. By the time he finished, it was past midnight. Adam collapsed onto the couch, staring at the twinkling lights strung across the window. They blinked cheerfully, oblivious to the wreckage beneath them. Outside, the city was quiet, snow beginning to fall in lazy spirals. It should have been beautiful, felt like mockery. His phone buzzed. Adam frowned. He'd blocked Tessa. So who? He checked the screen and felt a pang of guilt. Mom. He answered on the third ring. Hey, Adam. Her voice was warm, worried. It's late. Everything okay? He hesitated, then laughed softly. A brittle sound. Define okay. Oh, honey. The sigh was audible even through the static. What happened? He told her. Not every detail, but enough. The party, the kiss, the end. His mother listened in silence, then made a sound that was half gasp, half growl. I never liked that girl, she said finally. Too polished, like she was auditioning for something. Adam smiled faintly. You could have mentioned that before I spent 3 years with her. I didn't want to interfere, she said, then added. But I'm glad you trusted your gut. His chest tightened at the words. Yeah. Come home for Christmas, she said. Your room's still here. I'll make cinnamon rolls. Adam closed his eyes, picturing the old house, the smell of pine and sugar, his mother humming carols while his father pretended not to care. It sounded safe. It sounded like breathing. I'll think about it, he said. You do that. And Adam? Yeah. She didn't deserve you. He swallowed hard. Thanks, Mom. When he hung up, the silence felt heavier. He stared at the phone, half expecting it to ring again, and it did, almost immediately. This time, the name on the screen made him smile despite everything. That, Adam answered. Hey, your mother's pacing, his father said, voice calm as ever. Figured I'd call before she starts baking at 2 a.m. Adam chuckled. Appreciate it. She told me what happened. Yeah. Pause. Then, you okay? Adam considered lying, then decided against it. Not really. Another pause. You will be. Adam waited for more. Comfort, advice, something. But his father was a man of few words. When he spoke again, it was simple, steady. Trust your gut, he said. Always. Adam felt something loosen in his chest, a knot unraveling just enough to let air through. I did. Then you did right. They talked for another minute. About weather. About the game on Sunday. Before his father signed off with a gruff, call if you need me. And then the line went dead, leaving Adam alone with his thoughts and the soft whisper of falling snow. He sat there for a long time, staring at the lights, feeling the ache settle into something quieter. Not gone. Not yet. But muted, like a song fading at the end of a playlist. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he'd wake up single for the first time in 3 years. Tomorrow he'd start figuring out what came next. For now, he just sat and watched the snow, wondering if Christmas could still feel like Christmas when everything familiar had shattered. Chapter 4 for Calling Birds. Adam woke to sunlight spilling across the hardwood floor, bright and unapologetic. For a moment, he lay still, disoriented, until memory crashed in like a wave. The party, the kiss, the silence after. His chest tightened, but the sharp edge of last night's anger had dulled to something heavier, an ache that sat low and stubborn. He rolled out of bed and padded to the kitchen, where the remnants of his late-night cleaning spree gleamed like evidence. Counters wiped, bottles gone, floors swept. The apartment looked normal, almost cheerful with its string of lights and cinnamon candles. If someone walked in now, they'd never guess a small apocalypse had happened here 12 hours ago. Adam poured coffee and stared out the window. Snow blanketed the street, soft and clean, erasing tire tracks and footprints. A fresh start, the weather seemed to say. He wasn't sure he believed it. His phone buzzed on the counter. For a split second, his stomach dropped, old reflex, but then he remembered. Tessa was blocked. This was someone else. Mom again. Morning, honey. Just checking in. Cinnamon rolls are in the oven if you change your mind. Adam smiled faintly and typed back. Thanks, Mom. I'll let you know. He wasn't ready to face the house yet. The questions, the pity. He needed space to breathe, to figure out who he was without Tessa orbiting his life like a perfect little planet. He was rinsing his mug when a knock sounded at the door. Adam frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. He dried his hands and opened the door to find Mrs. Callahan standing there, wrapped in a red coat that looked like it had been stolen from a Christmas card. Her gray hair was tucked under a knit hat, and her eyes sparkled with the kind of curiosity that could power a small city. Adam, she chirped, stepping inside before he could protest. I was just coming back from the bakery and thought I'd check on you. You missed the carolers last night. Adam blinked. Yeah, I was busy. Mrs. Callahan's gaze swept the apartment like a radar, landing on the faint scent of bleach and the absence of Tessa. Her brows lifted. Where's your young lady? She usually answers the door before you. Adam hesitated, then opted for honesty, sort of. She's not here. Oh, the single syllable was loaded like a question mark with teeth. Trouble in paradise? Adam forced a smile. Something like that. Mrs. Callahan clucked her tongue, setting a paper bag on the counter. Well, I brought croissants. You look like you could use carbs. Adam laughed despite himself. Thanks. She studied him for a moment, eyes sharp behind her glasses. You know, Adam, Christmas has a way of showing people's true colors. Sometimes that's a gift, even if it feels like coal. He stared at her, surprised by the wisdom tucked into her words. Yeah, he said quietly. I guess it does. She patted his arm, then launched into a story about her nephew's disastrous engagement, complete with a runaway bride and a llama farm. Adam listened, amused in spite of everything. When she finally left, after insisting he take the croissants and get some fresh air before you turn into a hermit, the apartment felt lighter, like someone had cracked a window in his chest. Adam ate a croissant at the counter, crumbs scattering like confetti, and thought about what Mrs. Callahan had said. True colors. Maybe that was the point of all this, the gut instinct, the plan, the heartbreak. Better now than later. Better a clean break than a slow bleed. Still, the silence pressed in, thick and relentless. He needed out. Not forever, just for an hour. He grabbed his coat and stepped into the cold, the air sharp against his skin. The city was alive with holiday cheer. Kids dragging sleds, couples holding hands, shop windows glowing with garlands. Adam walked without direction, letting the rhythm of his boots on snow drown out the noise in his head. He ended up at the Christmas market downtown, drawn by the scent of roasted chestnuts and the sound of bells. Stalls lined the square, draped in lights, selling everything from handmade ornaments to steaming mugs of cider. Adam wandered through the crowd, anonymous and untethered, until a voice stopped him. Excuse me, sir. You dropped this. He turned to see a woman jogging toward him, holding a black glove. His glove. Adam blinked, caught off guard. Not by the glove, but by her smile. Bright, genuine, the kind that didn't feel rehearsed. Thanks, he said, taking it from her. Guess I'm not great at keeping track of things today. Join the club, she said, laughing. I lost my scarf twice this morning. It's a miracle I'm still wearing shoes. Adam smiled, the first real smile in what felt like forever. Cold day to lose a scarf. Tell me about it. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, eyes crinkling at the corners. Anyway, happy almost Christmas. Yeah, Adam said. And for a moment, the word didn't feel hollow. She waved and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Adam standing there with a glove in his hand and something unexpected in his chest. A flicker, small but undeniable. Not hope exactly, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. He slipped the glove back on and kept walking, the market buzzing around him like a living thing. Somewhere in the distance, carolers sang about peace on earth and joy to the world. Adam wasn't sure about joy, but peace? Maybe that was possible. One step at a time. Chapter 5 5 Golden Rings. Adam had never realized how loud silence could be until it filled his apartment like static. It wasn't just the absence of Tessa's voice. It was the absence of her presence, her perfume, her humming while she scrolled through recipes. The space felt bigger now and not in a good way. Like a stage after the actors have left, props still scattered under the lights. He sat at the kitchen table, nursing his second cup of coffee and staring at the glow of his phone. No notifications, no texts, just the blank screen reflecting his own tired face. He'd blocked Tessa everywhere, but that didn't stop the phantom buzz, the muscle memory of expecting her name to pop up. Adam rubbed his temples and tried to focus on work emails, but his mind kept circling back to the same question. What does marriage even mean anymore? He'd spent years thinking about it, planning for it, imagining the ring, the vows, the house with a yard. He wanted a family. Kids who knew what stability looked like, who didn't grow up watching love implode like a bad fireworks show. But was that realistic? Or was he chasing something that belonged in a Norman Rockwell painting? His dad's voice echoed in his head. Trust your gut. He had. And now he was here, single at 28, staring down Christmas like it was a test he hadn't studied for. The phone buzzed suddenly, jolting him. Adam glanced down and felt a flicker of relief when he saw the name. Ryan. Dude, heard about Tessa. You okay? Adam stared at the message for a beat, then typed back. Define okay. Ryan's reply came fast. Fair. Drinks tonight? Or tomorrow? Or both? Adam hesitated. The idea of sitting in a bar, drowning in holiday music and pity shots, didn't appeal. But the alternative was sitting here alone, spiraling into existential dread. He typed, tomorrow. Need to clear my head first. Ryan sent a thumbs up emoji, followed by, we're doing the ugly sweater crawl Saturday. You're coming. No excuses. Adam groaned aloud. Ugly sweater crawl. The annual tradition he'd dodged last year with a work trip. This year, he had no excuse. He typed, fine. But if I end up in a sweater with reindeer nipples, I'm blaming you. Ryan's laughing emoji was immediate. Challenge accepted. Adam set the phone down, smiling despite himself. Maybe this was what he needed. A night of bad sweaters and worse eggnog, surrounded by people who didn't look at him like a tragedy in progress. He spent the afternoon working, though working was generous. Mostly he stared at spreadsheets and answered emails with the enthusiasm of a man watching paint dry. By 5, he decided to take Mrs. Callahan's advice and get some fresh air. The snow had stopped, leaving the city draped in white like a postcard. Adam walked to the shopping district, where holiday lights blinked from every lamppost and speakers pumped out carols with relentless cheer. He ducked into a boutique that specialized in seasonal atrocities. Ugly sweaters stacked like neon nightmares. The air smelled of wool and peppermint, and the clerk wore antlers without irony. Looking for something festive? She chirped. Festive and humiliating, Adam said. Apparently that's the theme. She grinned and led him to a rack that looked like Santa's fever dream. Adam sifted through sweaters adorned with glittering snowflakes, 3D ornaments, even one with a battery pack that made the lights blink. He was debating between a monstrosity featuring a drunk elf and another with a plush turkey when a voice behind him said, go with the elf. It's got personality. Adam turned and froze. It was her, the woman from the market, the one who'd returned his glove with a smile that had lingered in his head longer than he cared to admit. Today, she wore a green coat and a scarf that looked like it had been knitted by someone with a vendetta against subtlety. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, and her eyes sparkled like she'd swallowed Christmas lights. Personality, huh? Adam said, holding up the elf sweater. Pretty sure it's a cry for help. She laughed, and the sound was warm enough to melt frost. That's the point. Ugly sweater parties aren't about fashion. They're about commitment to chaos. Adam smiled, feeling something loosen in his chest. You sound like an expert. 3-time champion, she said proudly. Claire, by the way. Adam. He shook her hand, surprised by the jolt of connection. Not romantic, at least not yet, but human. Real. So, Claire said, tilting her head. You going to a party or just embracing bad life choices? Ugly sweater crawl, Adam said. Annual humiliation ritual. Nice. I'm doing the same with friends. She held up a sweater featuring a cat tangled in tinsel. This one speaks to me. Adam chuckled. It's very festive. Festive and humiliating, she said, echoing his words. Theme achieved. They chatted for a few minutes, About the crawl, about the insanity of holiday shopping. Before Claire waved and headed to the register, Adam watched her go, feeling that flicker again. Small but insistent. He shook his head, grabbed the drunk elf sweater, and paid before he could overthink it. On the walk home, the city felt different. Brighter. Not because of the lights, they'd been there all along, but because for the first time in days, Adam wasn't drowning in what-ifs. He was thinking about a woman with a ridiculous scarf and a laugh that sounded like possibility. He wasn't ready for anything big. Not yet. But maybe, just maybe, Christmas wasn't going to be a total disaster. Chapter 6, 6 Geese A-Laying. Saturday arrived with a sky the color of pewter and air sharp enough to sting. Adam stood in front of his mirror, staring at the drunk elf sweater like it was a dare. The elf grinned back at him, cheeks flushed, clutching a mug of something suspicious. Lights blinked across its torso, powered by a battery pack that hummed faintly like a guilty conscience. Ryan's text had been clear. No backing out. We're meeting at O'Malley's at 6. Bring your festive shame. Adam sighed, pulled the sweater over his head, and tried not to think about how far his life had veered from the plan. 3 weeks ago, he'd been browsing engagement rings. Tonight, he was preparing to drink spiked eggnog in a sweater that looked like a cry for help. Life had a sense of humor, apparently. By 6, the bar was packed. Walls draped in garlands, tables crowded with people wearing sweaters that could blind a reindeer. Ryan spotted Adam immediately and let out a whistle. Look at you, Ryan said, grinning like a man who'd just won a bet. That elf is a masterpiece. Pretty sure it violates several fashion laws, Adam said, sliding onto a stool. Fashion laws don't apply tonight, Ryan said, clinking his glass against Adam's. To survival. Adam smiled, the tension in his shoulders easing as the group launched into stories and jokes. For the first time in days, he wasn't thinking about Tessa or betrayal or the hollow ache in his chest. He was thinking about how ridiculous Ryan looked in a sweater featuring a 3D turkey wearing sunglasses. The crawl began at 7, a parade of bad decisions winding through downtown. Bars overflowed with holiday chaos, bells jingling, carols blaring, strangers bonding over mutual humiliation. Adam found himself laughing more than he expected, the sound rusty but real. At the third stop, while Ryan argued with a bartender about whether eggnog counted as a cocktail, Adam stepped outside for air. The night was cold, snowflakes drifting like confetti under streetlights. He shoved his hands into his pockets and stared at the crowd spilling onto the sidewalk. People in sweaters, people in scarves, people leaning into the season like it was a lifeboat. And then he saw her, Claire. She was standing near a food truck, holding a paper cup and laughing with 2 friends. Her sweater was even worse than the cat one she'd considered. This one featured a llama wearing a Santa hat, complete with dangling pom-poms. It was glorious. And somehow, she made it look like a choice instead of a cry for help. Adam hesitated, then walked over before he could talk himself out of it. Nice llama, he said. Claire turned, her face lighting up. Nice elf. Adam glanced down at his sweater. He's festive. He's drunk, she said, grinning. But festive. They laughed, and for a moment, the noise of the street faded. It was just them, standing in the glow of a food truck, trading smiles like secrets. You doing the crawl too? Adam asked. Yep, Claire said, gesturing to her friends. Annual tradition. We take it very seriously. I can tell, Adam said, nodding at the llama. Claire laughed again, and Adam felt that flicker in his chest, brighter now, like a spark catching on dry wood. He didn't know what it meant, didn't want to overthink it, but he knew one thing. It felt good, real, unscripted. They ended up walking to the next bar together, their groups merging in a blur of lights and laughter. Inside, the air was thick with music and the smell of cinnamon. Someone started a contest for worst sweater, and Claire shoved Adam toward the stage with a grin that dared him to say no. He didn't. Standing under the spotlight in his blinking elf sweater, Adam felt ridiculous and free. The crowd cheered. Someone handed him a shot, and for the first time in weeks, he wasn't thinking about what he'd lost. He was thinking about what he might find. Later, when the night wound down and the groups began to scatter, Claire touched his arm lightly. Hey, she said, you survived humiliation with style. That deserves coffee sometime. Adam blinked, surprised, and then smiled. Coffee sounds good. Great. She scribbled her number on a napkin, handed it to him, and disappeared into the snow with her friends, leaving Adam standing there with a scrap of paper and a feeling he hadn't expected. Hope. He tucked the napkin into his pocket and stepped into the cold, the city glowing like a promise. Christmas wasn't fixed. His life wasn't fixed. But maybe, just maybe, it didn't need to be. Not tonight. Chapter 7 7 Swans a Swimming. Adam stared at the napkin on his counter like it was a lottery ticket he wasn't sure he deserved to cash. Claire's number was scrawled in blue ink, a little smudge where the pen had slipped. Felt human. Imperfect. Real. Everything Tessa hadn't been. He picked it up, turned it over, set it down again. He wasn't nervous about calling, he was nervous about what it meant. Coffee wasn't a proposal, but it was a step. And steps had a way of turning into paths, and paths had a way of leading somewhere you couldn't unwalk. Adam rubbed the back of his neck and glanced at the clock. 10 a.m. Saturday had bled into Sunday like spilled wine, leaving him with a mild headache and a sweater that still blinked accusingly from the chair. He'd survived the crawl, survived humiliation, even laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. And now, here he was, debating whether to send a text like a teenager. He typed, "Coffee? Today?" then stared at it for a full minute before hitting send. The reply came faster than he expected. "Thought you'd never ask. Noon? There's a place near the market, Bean and Birch." Adam smiled despite himself. "Noon works. See you there." Bean and Birch was the kind of cafe that looked like it had been curated by Pinterest. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, chalkboard menus with whimsical fonts. The air smelled of espresso and cinnamon, and indie Christmas music hummed softly in the background. Adam arrived early, partly because he hated being late and partly because he needed a minute to breathe. He chose a table by the window, where snowflakes drifted past like lazy confetti. His phone buzzed at exactly noon, and when he looked up, Claire was there. Green coat, ridiculous scarf, cheeks pink from the cold. She smiled, and the cafe seemed to tilt a little brighter. "Hey," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "You look less traumatized than last night." Adam chuckled. "The elf sweater builds character. Or destroys dignity," she said, grinning. "But you wore it well." They ordered coffee, black for him, caramel latte for her, and settled into the easy rhythm of small talk. The weather, the market, the sweater crawl's unofficial winner. A guy in a sweater that played Jingle Bells when you pressed the reindeer's nose. It was light, effortless, the kind of conversation that didn't feel like work. But then Claire tilted her head, eyes curious. "So, what's your story, Adam? You seem like someone who thinks before he speaks." Adam hesitated, fingers tracing the rim of his mug. He could lie, spin a version of himself that was neat and unblemished. But something about Claire's gaze made him want to tell the truth, or at least part of it. "Long story short," he said, "I was in a relationship. Thought it was solid. Turns out not so much." Claire's expression softened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Adam said quickly. "Better now than later." She nodded, and for a moment, silence stretched between them. Not awkward, just honest. Then she smiled, a little crooked. "Well, for what it's worth, you don't seem like someone who's broken." Adam laughed softly. "Give me time." Claire grinned, and the heaviness in his chest eased another notch. They talked for an hour, about work, she was a graphic designer. About Christmas traditions, she hated fruitcake with a passion that bordered on violent. About the absurdity of holiday commercials. Adam found himself leaning in, not because he was trying to impress her, but because he wanted to hear more. Her stories weren't polished monologues. They were messy, funny, full of tangents. Real. When they finally stood to leave, Claire tugged her scarf tighter and said, "Same time next week?" Adam blinked, surprised, and then smiled. "Yeah, I'd like that." "Good," she said, and walked out into the snow, leaving Adam with a heart that felt lighter than it had in months. On the drive home, Adam thought about how strange life was, how quickly things could break, and how quietly something new could begin. He wasn't in love, not even close, but he was curious, and maybe that was enough for now. As he pulled into his street, the lights on his apartment twinkled against the dusk, cheerful and oblivious. For the first time since everything fell apart, Adam didn't feel like they were mocking him. They felt like a promise. Chapter 8, 8 Maids a Milking. Adam was halfway through a spreadsheet Monday morning when his phone buzzed with a message that made him smile before he even opened it. Claire. "Hey, do you own anything worse than that elf sweater?" Asking for a friend. Adam chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Define worse, Claire." "Worse as in ugly enough to scare small children. There's a charity event Friday, ugly sweater contest, silent auction, spiked eggnog. You in?" Adam stared at the screen, feeling that flicker again, the one that had been growing steadily since their coffee. He typed, "Sounds terrifying." "I'm in." "Claire, perfect. Prepare for chaos, and maybe bring antacids." Friday night arrived with a sky full of stars and a chill that bit through Adam's coat. The event was held in a converted warehouse strung with lights, the kind of place that looked like Santa had exploded inside. Wreaths hung from exposed beams, tables groaned under platters of cookies, and a jazz trio played carols near the stage. Adam tugged at his sweater. A new monstrosity featuring a snowman with googly eyes and a scarf that jingled when he moved. He'd bought it on a dare to himself, and now regretted every decision that led him here. Claire spotted him near the entrance, waving like they were old friends. Her sweater was a masterpiece of bad taste. Neon pink with a 3D reindeer head jutting from the front, complete with glitter antlers. Adam laughed as she approached. "You weren't kidding about chaos," he said. "Chaos is the point," Claire said, grinning. "Also, the uglier the sweater, the bigger the donation. We're raising money for the children's hospital." Adam glanced around at the crowd, people laughing, bidding on gift baskets, posing for photos in sweaters that looked like crimes against fashion. "Well, in that case, I hope my snowman is doing its part." "Oh, he's doing more than his part," Claire said, poking the googly eyes. "This is nightmare fuel." Adam laughed, and for a moment, The heaviness that had shadowed him for weeks felt like it had melted into the twinkle of lights overhead. The contest began an hour in, hosted by a man in a suit covered with tinsel. Adam and Claire joined the lineup, standing shoulder to shoulder as the crowd cheered for each atrocity paraded across the stage. When it was Adam's turn, Claire hooped loud enough to make him blush. "Snowman of Doom!" she yelled, and Adam couldn't help grinning as he struck a ridiculous pose, bells jingling like a warning. He didn't win. The prize went to a woman wearing a sweater that doubled as a gingerbread house, but he didn't care. The laughter, the applause, the sheer absurdity of it all felt like oxygen. Afterward, they drifted toward the refreshment table, where a punch bowl of eggnog gleamed under fairy lights. Claire ladled 2 cups and handed one to Adam with a mischievous smile. "Careful," she said. "This stuff is spiked enough to fuel a rocket." Adam took a sip and nearly choked. "Wow, that's aggressive." Claire laughed, eyes sparkling. "Consider it a shortcut to holiday cheer." They found a quiet corner near the silent auction, sipping eggnog and watching people bid on everything from spa packages to a life-size inflatable Santa. Conversation flowed easily. About work, about family, about the ridiculousness of holiday traditions. Claire told a story about her uncle who dressed as a turkey every Thanksgiving, and Adam laughed so hard he spilled eggnog on his sweater. "Great," he said, dabbing at the stain. "Now it's festive and sticky." "Adds character," Claire said, grinning. "You'll win next year." Adam smiled, feeling that spark again, brighter now, steady. He wasn't thinking about Tessa. He wasn't thinking about what he'd lost. He was thinking about how good it felt to laugh with someone who didn't feel like a performance. Later, as the event wound down and people began gathering coats, Claire touched his arm lightly. "Hey," she said. "Thanks for coming. I know this time of year can be complicated." Adam met her gaze, surprised by the quiet understanding there. "Yeah," he said softly. "It can." She smiled, warm and real. "Coffee again soon?" Adam nodded. "Definitely." On the drive home, the city shimmered under strings of lights, and for the first time in weeks, Adam felt something close to peace. Not because everything was fixed, far from it, but because maybe, just maybe, he was starting to believe in second chances. Chapter 9, 9 Ladies Dancing. The invitation came on a Tuesday, tucked between work emails like a bright ornament in a box of gray. Claire's text read, "Holiday Gala. Friday night. Dancing, lights, live music. You in?" Adam stared at it for a moment, coffee cooling in his hand. Dancing. That was ambitious. He hadn't danced since his cousin's wedding 5 years ago, and even then, he'd spent most of the night hiding near the dessert table. But something about the way Claire phrased it, casual like it wasn't a big deal, made him type back before he could overthink. "I'm in. But fair warning, my moves are tragic." Her reply was instant. Perfect. Tragic is festive. Friday night shimmered like a promise. The gala was held in a glass atrium downtown, strung with thousands of lights that glittered against the winter sky. Snow fell in lazy spirals outside, but inside, warmth pulsed like a heartbeat. Music, laughter, the clink of glasses. Adam stepped through the doors and felt the weight of the past few weeks loosen another notch. He spotted Claire near the stage, her dress a deep green that made her eyes look like something you could drown in. She waved, and Adam felt that now familiar flicker in his chest, brighter, steadier. "You clean up well," she said when he reached her, giving his navy blazer an approving glance. "You too," Adam said, and meant it. She looked stunning. Not polished in the way Tessa had always been, but effortless, like she belonged in this moment without trying. They grabbed drinks, sparkling cider for her, bourbon for him, and wandered through the crowd, trading jokes about the silent auction items. Someone had donated a year's supply of fruitcake, which Claire declared a crime against humanity. The music shifted then, soft and lilting, and couples began drifting toward the dance floor under a canopy of twinkling lights. Claire turned to him, eyes bright. "Come on." Adam blinked. "Me? Yes, you," she said, grinning. "Unless you want to spend the night hiding behind the bourbon." He laughed, nerves prickling like static. "Fair warning, I wasn't kidding about tragic." "Tragic is charming," she said, tugging his hand. "Besides, it's Christmas. No one's judging." Adam let her lead him onto the floor, where the music curled around them like smoke. He placed a hand on her waist, tentative, and she smiled like it was the easiest thing in the world. They moved slowly at first, his steps awkward, hers patient. But then something shifted, a rhythm, a shared laugh, and suddenly, it wasn't about steps. It was about the way her eyes caught the light, the way her laughter brushed against his skin like warmth. For a moment, Adam forgot everything. The party, the crowd, the ache that had haunted him since that night in his apartment. He forgot Tessa's perfect smile and his father's stoic advice. All he knew was this: the music, the lights, and the woman in his arms who felt like possibility. When the song ended, Claire didn't let go right away. She looked up at him, cheeks flushed, and said softly, "See? Not tragic." Adam smiled, breath-catching. Maybe just mildly unfortunate. She laughed, and the sound felt like a gift. They danced again, and again, Slow songs, fast ones, even a ridiculous rendition of Jingle Bell Rock that had them spinning and laughing until Adam's sides hurt. Later, they slipped outside for air, the night crisp and quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. Snowflakes clung to Claire's hair like tiny stars. "Thanks for coming," she said, her voice softer now. "I know this season hasn't been easy." Adam met her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. "No," he said. "But tonight was good." She smiled, and for a heartbeat, Adam thought about leaning in, about closing the space between them and letting the moment tip into something more. But he didn't, not yet. Not because he didn't want to, but because he wanted to do this right. Slow. Honest. Instead, he said, "Coffee next week?" Claire grinned. "You're starting to sound predictable." "Predictable is safe," Adam said. "Safe can be good," she replied, and her smile lingered like a promise. On the drive home, Adam felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Not just hope, but anticipation. The kind that made the future feel less like a cliff and more like a road, winding but steady. Christmas lights blurred past his windshield, and for the first time they didn't feel like mockery. They felt like music. Chapter 10, 10 Lords a-Leaping. Adam had just finished wrapping his parents' gifts. 2 books, a bottle of bourbon, and a scarf his mother would pretend to love, when his phone buzzed with a name he hadn't seen in weeks. Tessa. For a moment, he just stared at the screen, the letters sharp against the glow. He'd blocked her everywhere, but apparently, she'd found a way through. New number. Maybe. His thumb hovered over ignore, but curiosity tugged like a loose thread. He answered, voice flat. "Hello, Adam." Her tone was breathless, urgent, like they were still in the middle of something. "Please don't hang up." He didn't. "Not yet. You've got 2 minutes." "Adam, I made a mistake," she said, words tumbling out like marbles. "I was stupid, and drunk, and—" "Stop." His voice was calm, almost gentle, but it carried weight. "You didn't make a mistake, Tessa. You made a choice." Silence stretched, heavy and brittle. Then, "I miss you." Adam closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. He'd imagined this moment, the apology, the pleading, but now that it was here, it felt hollow. Like a script he'd heard too many times in too many stories. "I don't," he said simply. Another silence. Then a sharp inhale, like she'd been slapped. "You can't mean that." "I do," Adam said. "Look, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not anything. But we're done. That's not negotiable." Her voice cracked. "Adam, please." He ended the call before she could finish, thumb pressing block with finality. The phone went dark, and Adam sat there for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of his apartment. No adrenaline, no ache, just peace. Later, he told Ryan about it over drinks at a cozy pub strung with garlands. Ryan raised his brows. "She really tried the whole redemption arc, huh?" "Yeah," Adam said, sipping his beer. "But I'm not interested in reruns." Ryan grinned. "Proud of you, man. Seriously, that's growth." Adam chuckled. "Feels more like survival." "Same thing," Ryan said, clinking his glass against Adam's. "To survival." Adam smiled, and for the first time the word didn't feel like a consolation prize. Felt like a foundation. The next day, Adam met Claire for coffee at Bean and Birch. She was already there, curled in a corner booth with a peppermint latte and a scarf that looked like it had been knitted by elves on a sugar high. When she saw him, her smile was warm enough to melt frost. "Hey," she said. "You look lighter." Adam slid into the seat across from her, surprised by how true that felt. "I am." They talked about everything and nothing, holiday plans, bad movies, the existential horror of fruitcake. At one point, Claire laughed so hard she snorted, and Adam thought, this is what real looks like. When they stepped outside, snow was falling again, soft and slow, blanketing the city in white. Claire tugged her scarf tighter and said, "So, Christmas Eve. There's a tree lighting downtown. You should come." Adam smiled. "Sounds good." And it did. More than good. It sounded like forward motion, like possibility. That night, as Adam walked home under strings of lights, he thought about how far he'd come in 10 days. From betrayal to laughter, from endings to beginnings. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't leaping. But he was moving, and for the first time, the future didn't feel like a gamble. Felt like a gift. Chapter 11, 11 Pipers Piping. The tree lighting downtown was everything Claire promised. Twinkling lights strung like constellations, carolers and scarves harmonizing under the glow, and the scent of roasted chestnuts curling through the cold air. Adam stood beside her in the crowd, hands tucked into his coat pockets, watching as the massive spruce flickered to life in a blaze of gold and silver. People cheered. Bells chimed. Somewhere, a brass band launched in to deck the halls, the notes bright and brassy against the winter sky. Adam smiled, but his thoughts were quieter than the music. Steady, deliberate, like footsteps on fresh snow. Claire glanced at him, her breath fogging in the chill. "You look like you're thinking deep thoughts," she said, voice teasing but soft. Adam chuckled. "Just taking it in." She tilted her head, studying him. "You're hard to read sometimes." "Occupational hazard," Adam said lightly, then hesitated. Can I be honest? Please do, Claire said, her smile warm enough to melt frost. Adam exhaled, watching the plume of his breath vanish into the night. The last few weeks have been a lot. I thought I had everything figured out. Turns out I didn't. Claire nodded, her expression open, patient. Life's good at reminding us we're not in charge. Yeah, Adam said, a wry smile tugging at his mouth. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I like spending time with you, more than I expected. But I don't want to rush into something just because I'm trying to fill a gap. Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the noise of the crowd faded. Adam, she said gently, I'm not asking for a leap, just steps. Honest ones. He felt something loosen in his chest, a knot unraveling. I can do steps. Good, Claire said, her grin returning like sunlight after snow. Because I'm terrible at leaps. They laughed, and the sound felt like music, real, imperfect, alive. They wandered through the market after the ceremony, weaving between stalls draped in garlands. Claire bought a ridiculous ornament shaped like a llama. It's tradition now, she declared, and Adam teased her about starting a collection of questionable holiday decor. Conversation flowed easily, punctuated by bursts of laughter and the occasional pause that felt comfortable rather than strained. At one point, they stopped near a vendor selling hot cider, the steam curling like ghosts into the night. Claire wrapped her hands around the paper cup and said, You know what I like about this? What? Adam asked. This, she said, gesturing to the lights, the music, the swirl of snow. It's messy. People bump into you, the cider's too hot, the carolers are slightly off-key. But it's real. Perfect is overrated. Adam stared at her, the words settling like truth. Perfect was overrated. He'd spent 3 years chasing it, and all it had given him was a hollow ache. This laughter, this imperfection, felt like something worth keeping. Yeah, he said quietly. It is. When they said goodnight, Claire hugged him, quick and warm, and Adam felt the echo of her words long after she disappeared into the crowd. Perfect is overrated. Maybe that was the lesson he'd needed all along. That night, back in his apartment, Adam sat by the window watching snow fall in slow spirals. The lights he'd strung weeks ago blinked softly, casting the room in gold. For the first time, they didn't feel like a reminder of what he'd lost. They felt like a promise of what could be, messy, imperfect, but real. And for Adam, that was enough. Chapter 12, 12 Drummers Drumming. Christmas morning arrived quiet and bright, the kind of winter day that looked like it had been painted in soft strokes. Snow blanketing rooftops, sunlight glinting off icicles like shards of glass. Adam stood by his window, coffee in hand, watching the city wake under a sky the color of pearl. His apartment smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine, thanks to the candle he'd lit out of habit. The gifts for his parents sat neatly by the door, ready for the drive later. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel heavy, felt calm, like the pause before a song begins. His phone buzzed on the counter. Adam glanced over, expecting a holiday text from his mom, but the name made him smile instead. Claire, hope you're not buried under wrapping paper. Merry Christmas. Adam typed back, Merry Christmas. Survived the wrapping. Barely. Her reply came fast. There's a pop-up concert in the square. Drummers, carolers, the whole festive circus. Come with me? Adam stared at the message, feeling that now familiar flicker in his chest, brighter than ever. He didn't hesitate this time. On my way. The square was alive when he arrived, pulsing with color and sound. Strings of lights crisscrossed overhead, and a line of drummers in red coats pounded out a rhythm that rolled through the crowd like thunder. People clapped in time, laughing, their breath fogging in the cold. It was chaos, pure and joyful. Adam spotted Claire near the fountain, her scarf a riot of color against the white snow. She waved, and when he reached her, she grinned like the world had tilted towards something good. You made it, she said, voice bright over the drumbeat. Wouldn't miss it, Adam said, and meant it. They stood together, watching as the drummers launched into a flourish that sent bells jangling and children squealing with delight. The music was wild, imperfect, alive, and Adam felt something inside him echo that rhythm, steady and strong. Claire leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his. This is my favorite part of Christmas, she said. The noise, the mess, the way everyone forgets to be perfect for a while. Adam looked at her, really looked, the flushed cheeks, the spark in her eyes, the way she fit into this moment without trying. And he thought, this is what I want. Not flawless, not scripted, just real. The drummers ended with a crash of cymbals, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Claire turned to him, laughter spilling like light. So, she said, coffee after this? Or cider? Or both? Adam smiled, heart steady now. Both. And maybe dinner. Her brows lifted, playful. That sounds suspiciously like a plan. It is, Adam said, and for the first time the word didn't feel like pressure. It felt like possibility. They wandered through the market after the concert, weaving between stalls draped in garlands. Claire bought roasted chestnuts, and Adam teased her about her obsession with holiday snacks. Conversation flowed easily, punctuated by bursts of laughter and the occasional quiet moment that felt like something more. When they reached the edge of the square, snow falling in soft spirals, Claire stopped and looked at him. "You seem different," she said gently. "Lighter." Adam thought about everything. The party, the heartbreak, the nights he'd sat in silence wondering if he'd ever feel whole again. And then he thought about this moment, this woman, this day that felt like a drumbeat in his chest. "I am," he said simply. Claire smiled, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the space between them. Adam didn't overthink this time. He leaned in, slow and sure, and kissed her, soft, warm, the kind of kiss that felt like a beginning rather than an ending. When they pulled back, Claire's eyes were bright, her smile curling like ribbon. "Merry Christmas, Adam." "Merry Christmas," he said, and meant it. That night, as Adam drove to his parents' house with gifts in the back seat and music humming low, he thought about how far he'd come in 12 days. From betrayal to laughter, from endings to beginnings. He wasn't leaping blindly anymore. He was stepping forward, honest, steady, ready. And for the first time, Christmas didn't feel like a gamble. Felt like a gift.